Alright everyone, hello. I'm here, I'm just still setting up for the tea time. So let me get to my channel comments and then I'll try to read what everybody's saying. Alright, we got Tiki Ghoul, Granny Gaming, RMS Kinarder, Tyler. Hello everybody. I'm just going to be setting up more of the stuff because I didn't finish, so... hello Wyatt, how's it going? Okay, I'm just gotta get the milk. There we go. Hello Allison. Hello Christian. Evan. Little Gamer. I'm good, Wyatt. I'm good. Alright, let me fill this with water. It's weird. Does the footage look a bit jittery to you? It almost looks a bit jittery. Huh. Strange. No, on the live stream it looks fine. Alright, that's weird. Good. That's done. Now I need to get the treats. Linux says, hey, it's me, Kyle, from the last 2 to 3 streams. Awesome. Hello, Kyle. Whatever says I'm already filled with water. Interesting. So I'm just getting some of these Scottish shortbread. And I need this plate for the McVitie's. So like I said, I finally ordered new McVitie's. It's cold weather, so they didn't melt together, thankfully. And I keep them stored in the fridge just in case. The last thing I want is to have McVitie's that are melted together. There we go. Hey Ken, how's it going? Christian says, hey Alex, do you think the Queen Mary is gonna look like new when she is finished with refurbishment? So when they reopen the ship this December, or possibly even this month, I'm not sure, she's not going to look brand new. They have warned us that it's not going to be that extensive, but that being said, she will look very well kept. And hold on, I'm going to move over to the seat now. Let's see here. Step over all the wires and cables. Hope I don't trip over anything. Alright, I'll go ahead and turn this water on too. So there we go. Alright, so what Long Beach has told us is that, you know, there is going to be an extensive refurbishment and that it's going to, excuse me, it's going to, the ship will look a lot better, essentially. I mean, there will be some new carpeting and stuff like that, so when you walk around the ship, it won't look so torn and ragged and stuff, because a lot of us who've been there, we've seen the worn out carpeting from the early 90s. Like, it needs to be replaced. So they are replacing that stuff. They are replacing some of the worn out linoleum on the ship. I can't promise it'll be you know, the main hull or anything. But they are replacing some of the worn out linoleum on the ship. They said that they are trying to replace the items, the carpeting, the linoleum, with similar stuff that would have at least been close to what was used in the 1930s, you know, without going too close to it. So they are doing some work that way. And then, of course, there's going to be a lot of paint touch-ups. The hotel rooms are getting a complete cleaning and refurbishing. Again, it might not be overly apparent, the differences, but you know, for those of us who've, you know, seen the ship up close and we kind of know what it looks like, we'll be able to spot the differences. So there's things like that, but she won't look exactly brand new. She just will look much better than she did before she closed. Now, when the full $290 million is spent on the refurbishment of the ship, you know, all that money, when that full amount is spent, yeah, she should technically look like a brand new ship. Technically. So, yeah, but the refurbishment that they're doing currently is only just to get her open again and make her look nicer for people who want to stay on board. So, hello Mike, hello Monk. Let's see. Whatever says, host sounds North American but is setting up English tea. Yes, absolutely. I am a big fan of English tea, especially the ritual of tea time. I'm an ocean liner fanatic also, and Cunard is my favorite ocean line company. So I have actual bone china and stuff here from ships like the RMS Queen Mary and RMS Queen Elizabeth. So this is actual bone china that was used on this ship between the 1950s and 1960s. And it is still in its classic Art Deco look from the ones that first debuted in the 1930s. So yeah, I have this whole setup here. I even have a kettle, which is something pretty much no American has. They do not have an electric kettle. So I have one. That is a big difference. Let's see. Ocean Liner Build says it's midnight here in Scotland. Awesome. I've always wanted to visit Scotland, especially Edinburgh. RMS Cunarder says, how did Queen Mary manage the Rogue Wave when she was a heavy roller? So, the Queen Mary managed the Rogue Wave because she was designed so she could roll up to 55 degrees off vertical before the weight distribution would cause her to completely flip over and capsize. So every ship has a maximum off vertical, I don't know the word, but every ship has a maximum tipping point. Every ship does. They know what the tipping point is for each individual ship. For the Queen Mary, the tipping point was 55 degrees off vertical. But when she was hit by a rogue wave, she rolled 52 degrees. So she, just 3 more degrees, she would have completely capsized. So yeah, that's how she managed to right herself afterwards. But that is a very close call, because even at the worst, you know, let's say you are on the roughest of oceans on a modern ship, the worst it could get is a 20-degree roll. So the Queen Mary reaching a 52 degree is pretty insane. Yeah, pretty insane. A lot of people had to have been injured and killed when that happened. The only problem is it was all done under the command of the American military, so that information is not released. We don't know how many people were injured or killed when the ship rolled like that, but it had to have happened. There's no way the whole ship rolled 52 degrees and then everybody just walked away just fine, you know. So yeah, let's go ahead and, because this is actual bone china, you do need to pre-warm it. I've already put the hottest tap water I have in here, and it's already gotten cold. But that's why I only empty out about half of the teacup with the tap water. Then I top it off. Then I'm going to empty half of the teapot and top that off. A little bit more. Okay. Then we top that off with boiling water. And then that should bring up the temperature significantly. And then we'll come back to that in like a minute or two. Okay. Let's see. Whatever says, I was at Queen Mary in 2006. Awesome. I know she's a bit run down, but aside from that, did you enjoy your experience? I'd be interested to know. Steve says, I would love to help fix her up. Yeah, I would too. If the city had a way, the city has not yet presented anyone with a way to physically go to the ship and help restore the ship. I'm sure hundreds of people, if not thousands, would want to do that. I mean, you know, people want to leave their mark on history. People want to be able to say, hey, you know, like, so many years ago, I helped restore the Queen Mary. You know, that is something that's really cool. Like, that's a great way to get people involved. From what comes to mind, there should be no reason why the city can't do that. So, yeah. I should have brushed my hair before I started the stream, but I was in such a hurry to get everything ready. Armis Cunarder says, Alex, do you like Queen Mary's front windows enlarged? It doesn't bother me either way. It really doesn't. It doesn't bother me either way. I mean, she's a retired ship, so it's not like I'm worried that a wave's going to crash in front of her bow and break those windows open. She's retired. She's going to sit there forever until one day she can't sit there any longer. So, yeah, it doesn't bother me either way, to be totally honest. And behind those windows is a public room, like a space designed for public use. So it's not like it's individual cabins, you know. Nobody's privacy is being violated. It's just that one area. So it doesn't bother me either way. Let's see. Doc says, I had the worst day. Glad to be here for tea time and Queen Mary trivia. Who's your favorite musical quest the Queen Mary ever... Oh, favorite musical guest the Queen Mary ever hosted? Henry Hall, I would say, because my friend Shiloh, he kind of got me into 30s band music and stuff. And so the first band leader I was ever introduced to, and the one that I still think is my favorite, is Henry Hall. And he was invited to be the band director on the maiden voyage of the Queen Mary. And he also created the famous song Somewhere at Sea. And so Somewhere at Sea is about the Queen Mary. Somewhere at sea, a liner is somewhere at sea. Yeah, it's a really good song. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. Somewhere at Sea by Henry Hall. It is about the Queen Mary. Let's see. Christian says, hey, Alex, did you know that the USS Alabama was in World War II? The same war that Queen Mary was in. I did hear about a USS Alabama. Yeah, I heard something about it. Let's see. Whatever says, whoa, that would ruin the China plates. What would ruin the China plates? Oh, the rolling, I guess? Yeah. I thought you meant mine. I was like, did I do something? I wasn't sure if I did something wrong. Okay, so these are sufficiently hot enough. I'm going to go ahead and boil the water again. When it's boiling, we'll dump out the teapot, fill it with boiling water, let it sit for about a minute, and then I'll put the tea in. Today we are having Twinings Earl Grey tea. It's my favorite one. I have 3 different types of Twinings. So I have well, actually technically 4, but I don't use the 4th one for this tea time. But I have the Twinings Earl Grey, which is my favorite. I have the English breakfast tea, which is, I like it. It's just not my favorite. I also have the Twinings Lady Grey tea, which I also like very much. So in terms of favorites, it probably goes Earl Grey, Lady Grey, English breakfast, and then beneath that would have to be Irish breakfast. So the fourth Twinings I currently have is a Darjeeling tea, but I don't know that they would have served that on Queen Mary, so I don't usually drink it here. Plus, I have it in bags, which is not how you're supposed to drink tea. So I use the Darjeeling tea for days when I'm not doing a tea time in front of you guys. It's for when I make tea, you know, and have it while I'm doing something on the computer. But here I have true British teas, because that's what this china was meant for. So, okay. Now we are going to empty out this teapot. The lid is somewhat... There we go. You have to be really careful because I may own this chinaware, but I really consider myself more of a custodian of it, because I'm hoping this stuff will outlast me as well, and someone else in the future can enjoy this stuff. So I'm trying to take good care of it so that way nothing bad happens to it. Oh, let me bring this over. Because you know what I saw on eBay the other day? Because I was looking, I'm always on the lookout if there's more, like, Cunard tea sets that need to be purchased or whatever. But you know what I saw the other day online? It was one of these Cunard scallop dishes. Okay. It's just a little scallop dish. But someone had glued seashells to the bottom of it. Because it's clam-shaped. So someone had glued seashells to the bottom of it. And they glued it terribly, too. Because whatever glue they used, it was like almost like a milky ivory color. And it was just in globs all over the plate. So it looked like some child had tried to glue seashells to it. And so I just looked at that and I was like, that is unbelievable that somebody would do something so atrocious to like, first of all, to bone china. And second of all, bone china that is from two ships, one that no longer exists, the other that no longer has its bone china for use. You know, like this is like this is rare stuff. So yeah, I don't consider myself the owner of this china. I consider myself really more the custodian who's taking care of it for the time being. So, all right, now I'm going to empty out half of this. And I'll top that off with boiling water just to keep that hot. That, I'm going to put the tea in. So, I like my tea to steep for 5 minutes. I just, you know, I know it's sort of a medium tea, but I just like it, you know, a little bit on the stronger side. Because I put milk in it and stuff, so, because I like to put milk in it. So, yeah, it needs to, so let's see, so 427, yeah. All right, there we go. So, teacup is still pre-warming. Teapot is brewing tea. I have my sugar, so the only thing that doesn't belong on here is these demi-tasse spoons. These are not from the ship, because if you try to find demi-tasse spoons from the ship, they're made of actual silver, and you have to, like, take care of silver. And I can take care of silver, but if you're going to use silver every day, you really have to take care of it. So I did not buy any silver demi-tasse spoons, especially since they cost a fortune. So I just got stainless steel demi-tasse spoons from, like, Amazon, and I use these for the tea time. So that goes there. Oh, I don't need a third one. Ozzy says, "Hey Alex, how's the weather today? Any snow?" No snow today. It's currently 50 degrees. That can't be right. It cannot be 50 degrees Fahrenheit. It has to be like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, because it is cold today. So, I'm going to say 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I really doubt it is 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So, and then the nights have been pretty cold. It's been getting down to the lower 30-degree Fahrenheit temperature range, which means it's been cold enough to freeze things. So sometimes you wake up in the morning and there's like frost all over the cars. So we're getting to that time of year. Yeah, I'm excited. I love snow, so I'm waiting for the snow. We should be getting rain coming in the next week or so. And maybe if the temperatures drop low enough, we'll get snow. Whatever it says, it was fun to wander about the ship. It was like a half museum and half hotel then. Yeah, it still is. It's still half museum, half hotel. Yeah, she is in dire need of some maintenance and some refreshing. But otherwise, what's really cool is just how much originality is still left on the ship. It's amazing. You can walk around the ship and really pretend that you're in the 1930s. Or heck, you can pretend you're in the 1950s or 60s, depending on what your favorite decade is of those three. Or 1940s, technically. Yeah, I love the Queen Mary. I can't wait to go back whenever that is. Oh, wow. Allison worked on the USS Alabama as a corrosion engineer. Wow. That's pretty cool. Ozzy says, Alex, are they keeping the World War II guns? I think so. I don't see a reason why they would get rid of them. Yeah, I think they're keeping them. One more minute on that T. Ocean Liner Build says, I might try to build a 6-foot cardboard model of the Queen Mary. Interesting. I've seen people build some really cool cardboard models. Goofy says, hi Alex, most historic steam trains have volunteers. Why not the Queen Mary too? You know, the thing is like I said, there's just none of the companies that have operated the Queen Mary have ever seen it necessary to allow volunteers to help take care of the ship. I don't know why. You would think that that's a really smart idea. Free labor of people who care about the ship in question taking care of it. That is brilliant. No, none of the companies have ever done it. And now that the city of Long Beach is back under full control of the Queen Mary, they have briefly spoken about their interest in... This is a really hot lid. I am burning my fingers. They have briefly spoken about their interest in getting the community involved with, you know, free volunteers and stuff, helping to restore the ship and stuff like that. But there is something about the Queen Mary that the city nor the private companies that have operated the ship, for some reason, they just don't want people, like volunteers, working on the ship. I don't know why. I really don't. There's a ton of ships nearby that have volunteers that are working to help restore it. It is a really strange predicament, and I will give you that. It's really strange that it has not happened yet. When I was still working with QMI Restore the Queen, we were talking to the city and saying that, you know, we really think it would be best if they allowed volunteers to help on the ship. And, you know, the city, now that they are back in control of the ship, they're open to the idea, but the conversation didn't really go further after that. So I really don't know if they plan to do it. I hope they do. It would not be the first city-owned asset that is maintained by volunteers. It really wouldn't. So it's not like it's the first time and they just don't know how to do it. I don't know. I really don't know. Alright, so... And I like milk in my tea. I use, because I'm lactose intolerant, I use oat milk, which doesn't diminish the flavor of the tea. Yeah. I can drink Earl Grey without milk. I just prefer it with milk. Alright, let's see here. And then you know what else I do is, for those of you who are new, I usually also prepare a tea sandwich. So I usually have like a cucumber sandwich or an egg sandwich of some kind. It's been really difficult to time my grocery orders to coincide with the tea times. So NCC, yeah, at that time the Russian sub was still very new next to the ship. Aurora says, I was wondering if you like the Portland Trailblazers basketball team. I'm not really into sports at all. I'm not a sports person. I've never really been into sports. So I can't say that I like them or anything. Whatever it says, elaborate tea procedure. Yes, it is an elaborate procedure. But the end result is quite enjoyable. Okay, so just really quickly to the viewer Beluga Luchuga or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, but to that person, please don't ask that question anymore. Every once in a while, you show up on my live streams and ask me that exact same question a few times, sometimes like 3 times in a single thing, and I answer it. And you still come back and ask the same question. So I'm not going to deal with it anymore. So if you're going to come back and keep asking that same exact question over and over again, I'm going to have to remove you from the chat. Let's see. Little Gamer says, ever heard of the SS Molalo? It has a pretty interesting story for its sea trials. Not worth a video, but interesting. Oh, I'll have to look it up. Whatever says, do you like Earl Grey? Oh yeah, it's my favorite. It's my favorite tea. Doc says, do you ever make chai? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I usually do it maybe like 2 or 3 times out of the week. I'll make chai from scratch. So I usually buy like ginger root and stuff. So the kind of chai I like, I forget, I think it's called chana. Is it chana? But anyway, the point is that the flavors I like in it is ginger and cardamom. So what I do is I slice up some fresh ginger, put that in a pot of boiling water. I usually put a pot or 2 of cardamom, and then I cut up some cinnamon sticks, just like little tiny pieces, to let that kind of steep in there. And then lastly, I sprinkle a little bit of clove, like ground cloves, just a tiny little sprinkle. And then I let that boil for 2 minutes straight of boiling. Then I add 2 scoops of Indian tea. So it's just like a typical like tea that they use for anything that's boiled, honestly. Let that boil for another 2 more minutes. Then I add oat milk. I could add regular milk, but again, I'm lactose intolerant, so I choose oat milk. I add oat milk, let that boil for another 2 minutes, and then I pour that out into a mug where I have like a tea strainer, and I add a little bit of sugar to that to sweeten it, and yeah, and I make that, and it's so yummy. That's my favorite chai to have, because I've had like masala chai, like spicy masala chai. It's not as much my favorite. I really like the ginger cardamom chai. Ginger cardamom chai. It's just, it tastes like Christmas. It's so delicious. So especially during this time of year, I love having it. Wyatt says it was cool. Even it has lights in it. Kept. Oh, you're talking about the cardboard one. Nice. Monk says, hey, Alex, are you going to do a tea time next week, Wednesday, or will you not because of Thanksgiving? Is Thanksgiving on Wednesday? Because if it's on Wednesday, I'm probably not going to do a tea time on that day. I will check my calendar. I hate the calendar on my phone because the way it's set up, it doesn't look like a normal calendar. I can't tell like what day is what. Okay, so let's see. Thanksgiving is on a Thursday. I thought so. Thanksgivings are always on Thursdays. Yeah, it should be fine then. Doing a Wednesday tea time should be fine. Yeah, Thanksgivings are always on Thursdays. So, yeah, I should be fine. I should be here. Let's go ahead and have some of this. This is Scottish shortbread. I make this myself because, well, I tried buying it and it was really expensive, and I realized I could save a lot of money if I just make it myself. So I make my own Scottish shortbread. My family likes whenever I make it too because I usually give them a bunch of it, and so they just enjoy it. Evan Scott says, thinking about sailing on Queen Mary 2. Awesome, I hope you get to. The locomotive is squeaking. I run the locomotive before I start the stream. It's not squeaking. As soon as I'm getting comfortable, then it starts squeaking. I can't stand it when it does that. I have to oil it now. Let me try to get through some comments real quick, then I'll oil the locomotive. Jeffrey says, speaking of eBay, I'm looking to buy a bunch of Disney history books if you're selling any. I'm not selling any, but if anybody here is, let Jeffrey know. Jeffrey, my day is really good. Or, sorry, Jimmy. Jimmy, my day is really good. Jimmy says, what's on the menu? Today it's just Scottish shortbread and chocolate-covered McVitie's. Ocean Liner Build says the coaches on the model train look like the ones on the Polar Express, just different color. Yeah, they kind of do. Wow, apparently I'm really behind on these comments. Ozzy says, is your dad into sports? He's not into sports, nor is he not into sports. If sports are on and people are watching it and he's among the people, he'll watch it. But he's never... I've never seen him go out of his way to put on a sports game on TV. When I was a kid, he took me to a baseball game once, but I think that was because his friends were going and he wanted to hang out with his friends. So he took me to a baseball game once. But
Or maybe twice, actually, because I went to the Dodger Stadium once and I went to the Angel Stadium another time. So, but no, I'm going to say not really. But he would be more into sports than I am, for sure. Because you couldn't pay me to sit through a sports game. He would sit through a sports game, but I wouldn't do it. Goofy Rolls says, like the Japanese tea ceremony, it's about the ceremony more than about the results, although the results are important too. Yeah, it really is. It's really more about the ceremony. Rayanne says, have you done a video about making the shortbread? No, because the shortbread, making the shortbread is really, really simple, but filming it would not be simple. I have tried filming me making different things. I do not like doing that. I discovered that real fast. I am not the kind of person that likes to reset up the cameras for every single shot that needs to be done. So I did not want to do that. But Spirit says, hey Alex, just joined the stream, but I think one of the trucks on your train you have is running is derailed. Nope, they're all on the track. They're all fine. Russell says, if a ship loses a propeller blade whilst sailing, how does it affect the ship? It'll slow the ship down. They'll have to stop using the propeller. So if it's a ship with two propellers, which most of them have, they'll just use the other one. And it'll slow the ship down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're stranded. Alright, so when that comes back around, I've got to oil it because it's driving me crazy. I did not want to do this on the live stream. Just place that over there for now. Alright, so put that over here real quick while I get this set up. I mean, instead of Titanic, wonder how large what affected thing. So the Theater Organ says, it would be interesting to have an alternate history scenario where Olympic sinks on her maiden voyage in 1911 instead of Titanic. I wonder how the larger publicity would have affected things. That is a really good question. I wonder if it would have really ruined the reputation of those ships, because if the first ship sinks, then surely nobody wants to spend time on the second one. Cool. All right. Wow, that was lucky. So much quieter. Where's my... Ah. Go. Evan says, hope to meet you one day on the Queen Mary. Yeah. A lot of people really want to meet me on the Queen Mary, but I can't guarantee I'll meet anybody there. There we go. Yeah, the part on the locomotive that squeaks is... It's not fixable. You can't permanently, like, make it not squeak anymore. Believe me, I've tried. Basically, every time I run this locomotive, before I do, I have to oil it. Every single time. So it's like a constant maintenance issue. But I love this locomotive, and it's the only one big enough to pull all the cars that I have. Like, this locomotive, I'm not even kidding. I've wanted this kind of locomotive since I was a kid. And I finally have it, and it squeaks like crazy. So... Alright, back to the tea. Aurora says, have you ever seen the TV show The Great British Bake Off? I have, but I'm not really into TV shows that have, like, competitive, you know, stuff. So. Rena says, I didn't know model trains need to be oiled. They usually don't, to be totally honest. They're usually designed in such a way that they get oiled at the manufacturers, and then they should be good to go for pretty much the rest of their life, unless you have an antique one, and, you know, and maybe you might need to oil it once, and it'll last another 20 years before it needs oiling. So that's usually how it happens. But with this one just, it needs oiling constantly, because the way it's built, it's got the weirdest, like, connection between the axles and the bearings. It's got the weirdest connection. I've never seen that on a locomotive like this. So so it requires constant oiling, or else it'll just keep squeaking and squeaking. It is really annoying. I've never had to deal with that on a train before, on a, you know, model train. But some that are really old, like from the 1950s, some of those on occasion need to be oiled, but not nearly like this. If I wanted to run this thing every day, it would have to be oiled every day. I've never heard of that before. So there is something wrong with this locomotive, for sure. Let's see. Hello, Jay. Jeffrey says, did you go to any Frasier filming locations in Seattle? Technically, yes. We already had plans to visit Pike's Fish Market, and to visit the monorail and the Space Needle. So those were already kind of on the list, and so we were there. But yeah, my dad and I aren't really the ones to go looking for film locations. I know that, like we had heard that there was some kind of Frasier tour in Seattle. And so we were looking for that because, you know, Frasier is my favorite show and my dad's favorite show. So, so we were looking for it, but there was nothing official on, like, a company that operates, like, a Frasier tour or anything like that. Basically, the closest thing was, like, there was, like, an online website that said, here's the filming locations, here's how you can get to them. That was about it, and we're not really interested in the filming locations necessarily. If it was part of a tour program, then yeah, we'd do it, but yeah, so, it does seem kind of like a missed opportunity, you know, for Seattle. And then we found out that there was a coffee shop that in the TV show Cafe Nervosa was based off of. So we thought, oh, we'll go to that coffee shop, because my dad and I really love coffee. So we thought we'll go to that coffee shop. I found out that the coffee shop closed during the pandemic and it never reopened. So that's sad. The one coffee shop that was very, very influential on the TV show no longer exists. So that was sad. For sure. Hello, Daniel. Spirit of Roanoke says, what would happen if the Queen Mary was still in service? Would that make Cunard more popular? No, I don't think so. I think it would actually decrease Cunard's popularity because people who go on cruises, and that's what Cunard is today, is a cruise company. When people go on cruises, they want to stay on the newest, most beautiful ships. Queen Mary is old, and that's what's appealing to her for history enthusiasts. But you have to remember, the majority of people are not history enthusiasts. It's easy to forget that when you're a history lover. You assume that most everybody has some kind of penchant for history, or architecture, or design, or something. But I've met some people who have zero interest in anything that's on the Queen Mary. And you'll be surprised how popular that kind of thinking is. So, yeah, I think if anything, that if the Queen Mary was still operating under Cunard, people would, in general, like just the overall success of the company would spiral downwards. They need to have new ships. That's what Cunard is about. And yeah, they have nods to the old styles on the Queen Mary 2. On the Queen Mary 2, that ship was built with an Art Deco style, but also keep in mind, it wasn't built with a 100% historically accurate Art Deco style. It very much is a new ship with an Art Deco style. So, yeah, unfortunately. The Queen Mary is meant to be a museum ship / hotel, and, you know, and she will bring in the people who really love history and want to experience that on a day-to-day basis. But, yeah, keeping her in operation as a historic experience probably wouldn't, like, and on the ocean kind of operation probably would not be a very profitable thing. Russell Cooper says, how long is the expected lifespan of the Queen Mary 2? Well, that's kind of a hard question, because if you maintain anything and you continue maintaining it, it'll last as long as you maintain it, you know? That trestle bridge that you're seeing on my live stream, if I never took care of it again, it probably would last maybe 10 years and it would be done. But if I kept maintaining it, every time something on it broke or came loose and I fixed it, it'll last as long as I keep doing that. So it's the same thing with a ship. That being said, they can calculate how long a ship will be profitable under its current maintenance conditions, and generally speaking, that comes out to about 40 years. But then if something is done in that amount of time to lengthen the period of time, then that can happen too. So think about it this way. One of the reasons why ships are generally built to last 40 years is because every 10 years, people's styles, interior design preferences, every 10 years, all that changes. So 4 decades later, your ship is a time capsule. So unless they completely revamp the interiors to something that will fit, you know, the modern age 40 years from now, that might be a problem. Or let's say under the current maintenance conditions, the engines need a complete rebuild or replacing, and they're not, well, then the ship won't last longer than that 40 years. So that's really what it means. Like, but as long as you keep maintaining the ship, it'll last as long as you want it to. And so, yeah. Another good example is the Golden Gate Bridge. It was built to last 100 years, but of course, that will last longer if you keep maintaining it. So, doesn't necessarily mean that there is a definitive lifespan on something. Hello, Kevin. Jimmy says something evil happened a couple days ago. That's not sure how to react to that. Okay. Daniel says, "Hey Alex, would you rather go on the Olympics maiden voyage or Aquatania's maiden voyage?" That's a good question. I guess I don't really know what the difference was, besides the fact that they're two different ships. I would probably have to say I don't know, maybe Olympic, but only by a tiny little fraction of a margin. But I don't really know why. I don't know what was so different about the two ships that would have made me want to choose one over the other. So I guess it's not really a fair answer because I don't really know why I chose Olympic. But Aurora says, was Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth ever photographed next to Andrea Doria? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Wyatt says, I get so bothered when people call a ship a boat. I'd pretty much agree with that, yeah. But I get more bothered when people call an ocean liner a cruise ship. But I also remember that most people just don't know the difference. So I don't know if you guys saw my I did a community post on my channel, and I'm talking about narrating the RMS Queen Mary, Queen of the Queens book. And I'm on chapter 6, so I'm about to, like, I've been narrating chapter 6 today. And chapter 6, so, first of all, this book is so difficult to read out loud because the author, he structures his sentences really weird. He puts the words in a certain order that doesn't sound right when you speak it out loud because it's confusing. And there's also the fact that there's a lot of spelling errors, and it's really bad. But the worst offender has been chapter 6 so far. Chapter 6 is so full of weird tongue twisters and oddly structured sentences and stuff. Like, it is really bad. And I posted on the community post an image of one of the paragraphs that just drove me nuts, because when I read it, I could read it out loud for you guys right now, actually. Russell says, how many seconds or minutes would it have taken for the Queen Mary to go from 0 knots to top speed? There is a number. Oh, I don't remember. But I do know that the Queen Mary, going from 0 to top speed, she could reach that in about a mile, I believe. Yeah. But that's if they, like, really just rev the engines up real fast. So she could reach that in about a mile, I think. Yeah. I know that she could go from 0 to 12 knots in her own length. That's for sure. But I don't remember how long it takes. It would have to be several hours. Like 2 or 3 hours. Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. Alright, let me get the book real quick, because I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Because this is ridiculous. Okay. So this book is written so weird. I'll read for you the first sentence of this paragraph. On another voyage later that July, American GIs staged a minor rebellion of their own aboard the ship when 2 pet dogs the GIs had smuggled on board were discovered by ship's officers, chloroformed, and buried at sea. What does that sound like to you? I'll read that again. On another voyage later that July, American GIs staged a minor rebellion of their own aboard the ship when 2 pet dogs the GIs had smuggled on board were discovered by ship's officers, chloroformed, and buried at sea. It sounds like the ship's officers had discovered that 2 dogs were chloroformed and buried at sea by the Americans. But that is not what has happened. What happened was the American GI smuggled 2 dogs on board, the ship's officers discovered them, and then chloroformed the dogs and buried them at sea, because the Americans were not allowed to keep the dogs. But the way that sentence is structured makes it sound the opposite. And so for the longest time, I was trying to read that sentence and go, okay, where does it make sense? Like, because I thought maybe I missed a comma, or I didn't emphasize, because sometimes you have to emphasize a certain word before you can move on to the rest of the sentence, or else the rest of the sentence won't make sense. This was not one of those sentences. It was really, really confusing. And I just had to accept that there are some words missing from that sentence. Yeah. Things like that. And then I pointed out also that they talk about this guy, Sergeant John R. Miller of Queensburg, comma, PA. And this is capital PA. Capital P, lowercase a. I'm like, Queensburg. What is that? And then I thought the capital P, lowercase a, I'm like, that's not a state. So that's not Pennsylvania. So I thought, well, where is that? And I couldn't think of. I'm like, this sergeant. He's either American, which I'm absolutely 100% sure he's American, or he's Canadian. Only one of those two. I looked in all of Canada. There's no Queensburg, PA. I looked in the United States. There's no Queensburg, Pennsylvania. So even if the PA was a state, which it was not correctly capitalized on both letters, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere. So what I did find was that there is a Queensberry Parish in Canada. But even if he got the G on Queensburg incorrect, and it's supposed to be Queensberry, you don't put a comma and then abbreviate parish like that. It's weird. So it's things like this. I read it and I'm like, and it totally stumps me. And then I have to go, okay, well, I better not get this place wrong, because if I read it and I say Queensburg, Pennsylvania, and someone goes, actually, Alex, that's Queensburg Parish, then I have to do my research when I come across stuff like that. And so, yeah, it is really weird. And then get this. In the top of the page, it says, returning on the same voyage was Representative George Grant of Troy, comma, capital A-L-A, period. A-L-A. I'm like, where is that? If that was an abbreviation for a state, like let's say Alabama, then you would have like A-L for Alabama. But it's A-L-A. I had to accept that if he's a representative who is reporting to Congress, then he must be American. And that must mean he's from Troy, Alabama. But that is not how you abbreviate a state. So it's things like that that really just throw me off when I read them. I'm going to put this down somewhere. So yeah, as you can see, this book drives me absolutely bonkers when I try to read it. So I hope you guys are appreciating the book, because it is one of the most difficult books to read. And that's only just small examples. Like, it's constant. Like I read through one whole paragraph, right? And I was saying this person's name, and it was like Jeff, right? J-E-F-F-E, Jeff. And then at the bottom of the paragraph, the guy changes the spelling to J-A-F-F-E. Jaff. And he does that twice. So what is it? Is it Jeff or is it Jaff? Like, so I had to decide. I tried to research. I couldn't find who he was. I had to decide. I was like, okay, he's either going to be Jeff or Jaff. I chose to call him Jaff because it's his last name. So I don't know if there's anybody with a last name named Jeff, but it's just weird. It drives me bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Okay. Tyler says, I'm going to look at... See, John, I thought about Greensburg. But why would he put Queensburg? And then, like I said, he didn't abbreviate Pennsylvania correctly. So I really don't know. Alright, so Tyler says, I'm going to look at the blueprints again. But how many hospitals did Queen Mary have besides the isolation ward? Just one. So, they had a hospital on D deck. And it was accessible by first-class passengers. And they had a ship's surgery there. 2 surgery theaters, I believe. Yeah. Yeah. So the ship technically, kind of in a way, had 2 hospitals. The main one, and then there was the isolation ward. Rena says, random question. Are there Raising Cane's franchises in Oregon? Just wondering because I'm having Raising Cane's for dinner. Yeah, they do have Raising Cane's up here, but very few of them. I think I've only seen one maybe like almost 10 miles from where I live. Yeah, it's not very many. Rayanne says, that's a very strange, poorly written sentence. Also, so sad that the poor dogs, no matter how you read it. Yeah, it is really sad that they killed the dogs just because they weren't allowed to have them on board. But at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, they're going from France to the United States, and, you know, they can't afford to keep dogs on there, you know, if they can't be confirmed, you know, not to have certain diseases and stuff that'll affect dogs in the United States and all that stuff. But yeah, it... yeah, but yeah, the sentence was really crazy. It just drove me nuts. LOC Quad. C-Quad, I got your email asking about if there's footage of that hallway. I don't know. You'll have to ask Steve. I can only answer you questions about, like, stuff I have, and I don't have any footage of that hallway, so you'll have to ask Steve. Top impressive line says, would you rather sail on Queen Mary or the Normandy? Oh, Queen Mary, 100%. I mean, she's my favorite ship of all time. Yeah, I would... Yeah, that's an easy answer. Everybody on this channel knows Queen Mary is my 100% favorite. It's Woody says, 3-letter state abbreviations were the norm until the 70s. Zip codes and 2-letter standardization were implemented around that time. Interesting. Okay, that I didn't know. Well, that would make sense. The book was published in 1969. But then it's just weird because he put ALA for Alabama, but then he puts PA for Pennsylvania. Yeah. Hello, Mary. Yeah, so, yeah, that was my little rant about the book. It is definitely a very difficult book to read out loud. You know, I never had this problem because I've read the book twice before, but I've read it silently to myself. And so when I read all these sentences, it makes sense to me. But then when I was reading them out loud, I realized that some of them just don't make sense when you read them out loud. It just doesn't sound like the way someone would talk, you know? So... Top impressive line says, I heard that Normandy had a cleaner deck than Queen Mary, but I was still sailing Queen Mary. It's just one deck, you guys. Sports deck on Queen Mary was separated into 3 different areas. On Normandy, it was all one area, but that's just one deck. So I never understood people that are like, oh, because I have heard people say that they would not sail on Queen Mary. They'd rather sail on Normandy because Queen Mary had a cluttered sports deck. I'm like, really? The one deck on the whole ship that bothers you? So, but yeah, I've heard people say that to me before, and I was just kind of like, what? Jimmy, I think they're called lavatories on an airplane. Goofy Roll says, what's your favorite Queen Mary memory? I'm trying to think of something specific, but I suppose I remember being really excited to hear the Queen Mary sound her whistles. So I remember with my friends Steve and Chris, we went up to the forecastle deck, and I think it was going to be 2 p.m. I think the horns were going to go off at 2 p.m. So we went to the forecastle deck and we sat there, or stood there, and I feel like the whistles went off maybe 2 minutes late, because we were there for 15 minutes early just to make sure. And when the time came, I remember seeing the time and I'm like, okay, any second now. I have the camera ready. I'm holding on, you know. And we must have sat there for an extra 2 minutes before they finally went off. But when they did, it was wonderful. It was something I was looking forward to, because I had heard the whistles as a kid, but as an adult, I really wanted to experience that again. You know, it's the voice of the Queen Mary. You know, so that was something really interesting. There was a lot of cool stuff, like just being with my friends down in the boiler rooms and stuff, and seeing the ship from that angle. You know, it was really fascinating. Russell says, why is a ship's service speed always about 3 knots lower than her top speed? Because several reasons, but the main reason is that a ship is not designed to always sail at top speed. Think about it this way. When you buy a car and the top speed on the car is 130 miles per hour, does that mean that everybody expects you to drive 130 miles per hour on the road? No. It's just, you know, you have to maintain safe speeds and stuff. And even then, let's say you were where nobody cared about what speed you're driving. Let's say you're on a private road that is a straight road through a desert. Yeah, you could drive at 130 miles per hour just for fun. But let's say you're not doing it for fun. Let's say you're just trying to get across the desert and you're trying to get somewhere. You'd probably drive at maybe 100. Still faster than what you would drive on a freeway, but a manageable speed, right? And so that's the reason why ocean liners did that. But also because of the fact that when an ocean liner approached its top speed, it consumed significantly more fuel than was necessary. So there was something along the lines of, it was an exponential consumption of fuel for every knot they gained in speed past the service speed. So if Queen Mary's service speed was 28.5 knots, you know, and they went to 29.5, then they'd probably be wasting fuel at that point, because they could probably arrive in New York at 28.5 knots and still have fuel to spare. Whereas if they went 32 knots to get to New York, they wouldn't have any fuel to spare. So it's just a matter of going the right speed for the engines and the right fuel consumption and all of that. So they only run ships at a certain service speed because that's what they're designed for. You never want to max out any kind of vehicle at max speed all the time. So hello, Malibu Company. Hello, Teresa. Teresa, I would say Queen Mary too, but I'm biased for sure. Empire of Waterloo says, hi Alex, cool lighting today. Oh, and guess what? My dad is listening to your audiobook videos recording thing about the Queen Mary and thinks it's splendid. Awesome, thanks. Yeah, the chapter 6 should be coming out soon. possibly tomorrow, because I am in the middle of recording it, so I'm trying to get it done. Chris says, my favorite ship is RMS Britannic 2, 100% all the way. The same as with you and Queen Mary. Yep. J. Rod says, I think they had a mock diver in one of the Queen Mary's propellers. Yes, in the Queen Mary's propeller room, they once had a mock diver when I was in my early 20s. But then they've since taken the mock diver out because, it started getting gross and old and stuff, so they took it out. But yeah, they used to have that in there. Jimmy Lance says, am I the only Canadian here? Just a boot. Let's see. Teresa says, how do Queen Mary's whistles work? So, it's really complex, and even I don't know the full story of how it works. But from my understanding of it is... So, at the base of the horn is, let me just empty the crumbs off of this plate. At the base of the horn is something they call a diaphragm. It's a thin piece of metal, and it's a lot like a plate, and it's held vertically like this. And from my limited understanding of how these things work, they blow steam across the face of the diaphragm. Because it's so thin, the diaphragm wants to move back and forth like this as the steam goes across it. Or maybe it goes behind it, I forget. But either way, it goes along, the steam goes on one side of it, and it causes the diaphragm to move. And that moves at a very specific frequency. For the Queen Mary, they tuned the frequency to 55 hertz. If I remember correctly, that means 55 times per second that plate will move back and forth. And that is a low enough sound, and that it was tuned as well to A flat, I believe it is. A flat. And so, yeah, that's how the Queen Mary's horn works. And so, of course, the horn on the end of the diaphragm amplifies that sound to make it much louder. And yeah, and so that's how the Queen Mary's whistles work. Wyatt Horn says, was the Great Eastern an ocean liner? If so, that is the ugliest ocean liner. The Great Eastern, yeah, that was an ocean liner, yeah. Doc says, have you been on any of Seattle's famous ferry boats? Yes, when I was maybe 10 years old, I went to visit a cousin who lived on Bainbridge Island at the time. And yeah, to get to Bainbridge Island, I had to take the ferry. And that was pretty cool because it was a very windy day that day. And I remember I was basically like leaning far forward and letting the air hold me up. That was pretty cool. But I was also afraid I was going to get blown off the ship, so... but yeah. Yeah, I did that when I was 10 years old. When I was in Seattle the other day, my dad was saying, oh, should we go to Bainbridge Island? And I told him, I said, there's not really a reason for us to go to Bainbridge Island. Like, there's nothing really there except people's homes. Like, it's a community of... like a suburb, you know. So there's not really a reason to go there, but I told him, I said the ferry boat ride is pretty fun, but brief, you know, so, but yeah, we didn't end up going to Bainbridge the other day. Teresa says, I don't think the Great Eastern is ugly. Where do you Queen Mary 2's port? Where is? The Queen Mary 2... depending on what cruise you take, and they reposition the ship all the time. especially because she does world cruises as well. So I don't know. You have to book and see what cruise you want to take. But if you want to go transatlantic, she goes between New York and Southampton, more specifically Brooklyn and Southampton. And then when she goes up for her Germany cruise, she'll go from Southampton up to Bremerhaven, Germany. I think she also makes a stop in Belgium. Yeah, and then she does world cruises as well, so it's difficult. You have to, like, see what the availability is. Teresa says, is it expensive? Yeah, I mean, you know, compared to like a I don't even know what to compare it to because I'm not a cruise person. I don't go on cruises. But I know it's like if you're talking about the cheapest cruise ship versus the most expensive one that ever exists in the world, Cunard is like almost towards the most expensive. So yeah, but yeah. I'm the worst person to ask this stuff. I'm going to be totally honest. I'm the worst person you can ask because I've never been on a cruise before. I know nothing about cruise ships or how much things are supposed to cost. Like, I have no clue. No clue whatsoever. I want to warm up my teacup because it's already 5:30, so. Alex, random question. What is your favorite food? It's really difficult for me to decide because I love pretty much anything. I mean, pretty much the only thing I won't eat is bugs. So, but I mean, I suppose one of my favorite things to have is crawfish étouffée, which is a dish that is often served in Louisiana, especially in New Orleans. So I do love crawfish étouffée and jambalaya. But I also really love sushi. I grew up eating sushi, so going to nice sushi restaurants has always been really fun for me. It's just a whole bunch of stuff, to be totally honest. NCC says, can't wait for my transatlantic crossing next July. I have a cabin on port side 11 deck. Interesting. Teresa says, is there a Cunard yacht? No, I've never heard of there being a Cunard yacht. Rena says, wow, so do you like durian? That is my least favorite food. I've had durian only once, and the way I had it was I went to a vegan place, because one of my cousins is vegan, and so they invited me to go to this vegan restaurant, and it was like a pork po' boy, but instead of using pulled pork, they used durian. And it was good. It tasted like pulled pork, and it tasted like barbecue and stuff, so it was good. But I've never had durian, like, straight up, like, you know. So I'm just warming the teacup because it's so cold in here. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of boiling water to the tea itself just to raise the temperature. Oh, I was gonna put the lid on the... Okay. That's funny. Marina says, I can't get over the smell of durian. Yeah, I heard it. I heard that it smells bad. I've never smelled it myself, but I heard that it smells bad. Chris, that sounds really awesome. Teresa says, how far is Portland to Seattle? If you drive along the 5 freeway, you can get there in exactly 3 hours. Which for some people that might be a long drive, but I grew up, you know, my dad would drive me to San Francisco from Orange County, California. And that, we would take the 101, which was not the fastest way. We took the 101 because it was more scenic, but we would get there in 7 to 8 hours. So I'm used to going up to 8 hours to get to like San Francisco. So driving 3 hours to go from Portland to Seattle is really just nothing to me. So yeah, it's fun. I mean, I think if we weren't worried about gas money and spending a lot of money, you know, going out all the time, we'd probably go there every weekend, to be totally honest. To Seattle, that is. But gas is an issue. My dad's car is a hybrid, but still. Teresa says, do you like Poseidon, the 2005 movie? I've never seen the 2005 version of Poseidon. I've seen the 1972 version, but not the 2005 version. Okay. I better drink this one fast because it's warm, but it won't stay that way for long. It is very cold outside. There's something wrong with... I'm going to check the weather real quick on my actual weather app. Because there's no way it's 49 degrees Fahrenheit outside. It's got to be way colder. It's 39 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Yeah. And then it'll get down to 31 degrees around 2 a.m. Which means it'll be below freezing then. But no rain, so no snow. And when the rain comes in about a week, the temperatures will all go up a few degrees. So definitely no snow. Russell Cooper says, did the Queen Mary sail around Cape Horn or through the Panama Canal to reach her final resting place? The Queen Mary had to sail around Cape Horn because she was too large for the Panama Canal. She was wider than the Panama Canal by 18 feet, and she was longer than the Panama Canal's locks by, I think it was 20 feet, just about 20 feet. Yeah, so she was definitely too big to fit through the Panama Canal, so they had to drive around Cape Horn. And that was a big issue for Cunard, because when Long Beach bought the ship, Cunard said, okay, great, well, she has to go around Cape Horn, so we don't want passengers on the ship, so we're going to offer to sail her on with a skeleton crew, which means just minimum crew, sail her with a skeleton crew to get her around the Cape and then up to Long Beach, and then you can have her. Well, Long Beach said, no, wait, this is going to be her very last voyage ever. Everyone's saying we should do like a big, like, cruise event. And Cunard said, no, that's not a good idea. First of all, it's a really long voyage. Second of all, you have to go around the Cape, and the Cape is really dangerous. And so, you know, they said, like, you know, there's really no telling what will happen to the Queen Mary if she goes around the Cape of South America. But Long Beach said, look, we need to make some of this investment back, and the way we can do that is by selling tickets on the final voyage. So ultimately, Long Beach won. Cunard had to sail with a full complement of staff and crew, and they sailed around the Cape. And they were really lucky because what the captain had said was, you know, the Cape is a unpredictable area. Sometimes the storms can be so bad it would just sink ships. And the captain was really worried that would happen. But on the day that they sailed around the Cape, it was a little bit windy and there was a little bit of a sprinkling of rain, but by no means was there any storms or any bad seas. So the Queen Mary was just by happenstance blessed with an easy voyage around the Cape. I mean, if there is a God, he loves the Queen Mary, that's for sure. So, let's see. Chris says, modern day aircraft carrier and old ocean liners have one thing in common. They are both steam powered, one by nuclear reactors and the other by coal or oil. Yep, that's true. Goofy Roll says, have you considered an electric cup warmer? It would keep your cup of tea warm until you drink it, just a thought. I have thought about it, but it might obscure people's view of the tea service, which is what this whole thing is about. It's about kind of just, you know, using the Cunard tea service to... Because what I could do is, like, they easily have one of those... They have one of these metal mugs that sit on, like, a base, and it looks like a saucer. The base looks like a saucer. But it will keep your tea at exactly the temperature you want it all the time. I thought about buying one of those, but again, it just, you know, it's about using the tea service, and, you know, what good is it if you can't see what I'm using, you know, so. Teresa says, have you eaten salmon? I love it. Yeah, salmon is one of my favorite fishes to have. But I don't have it very often. I try to have, like, a seasonal fish if I can. Something that, you know, if I eat it, I'm not taking away its ability to survive. You know, like the species surviving. But yeah. Oh, Teresa's going. See you later, Teresa. Yeah, I should end the live stream soon as well. I may have some of these. Chris says, I know about Cape Horn being very bad weather because my friend Ron, who was a Navy SEAL, told me that it gets very bad down there. Yeah. Yeah. And it was just amazing that the Queen Mary was able to get around there without a storm or anything. Because the Cape is... The seas around the Cape is a really big area. You know? It takes hours to get through it. Or a whole day, actually, I think. A whole day. So the fact that there was no terrible weather for the whole day, miracle. It was the USS Truxtun. Interesting. See you later, Daniel. Yeah, and what else was really interesting about that was that when the Queen Mary was coming to Long Beach, she was carrying 2 London double-decker buses and I believe 4 London phone booths. Sorry, I had to think of what it was called. 4 London phone booths, which is pretty neat. And all that stuff was on display for a while after the ship opened at Long Beach. But over the years, it fell into disrepair. The 2 buses were eventually sold off. Mary Rower from QMI Restore the Queen owns 1 of those double-decker buses. The other, the phone booths are still at the Queen Mary today. There's 2 on the ship. one near the entrance to the hotel at ground level, and then one was at the little English village outside the Queen Mary, but that was moved towards the Queen Mary lately because the village is now condemned. So yeah. NCC says, it's a shame Princess Marguerite II wasn't saved as a museum in Seattle. Yeah. Oh, someone had suggested to me that when I went to Seattle to check out the, well, there's a steamship there. And I looked it up. And there's no guarantee that they open it, you know, for people to explore. You have to, like, rent it, I suppose. So that was disappointing because I was looking forward to seeing a steamship, but it's one of the kind that you have to, like, rent it and stuff. Well, don't get mad at me, Goofy, but I haven't seen any of the Doctor Who show, so I don't know what you're referencing. These are really good, these McVitie's. The ones with the chocolate on them. The TARDIS was Doctor Who's time machine. Interesting. NCC says the steamship was Virginia V. Yeah. I was looking to see if I could visit it, but it said, like, if you want to be on the ship, you basically have to, like, book it for, like a either a voyage or a banquet or something. Well, you couldn't just go there, pay a fee, walk on the ship, so... But it's funny because it's just another reminder of how successful these old steamships can be as museums, as tourist attractions. I remember when I first started talking about the Queen Mary on my channel, there were a few people who were like, oh, why do people keep insisting on keeping ships like the Queen Mary? These ships never end up profitable or successful. And all I could think of is, like, there's tons of them that end up profitable and successful. Look at the Rotterdam. Look at the, you know, the QE2. You know, and then you got ships like the Virginia V and stuff like that. There's a lot of these old steamships that are kept profitably as tourist attractions. There are even some that predate the Queen Mary, such as the was it SS Great Britain, SS Great Britain, ocean liner, steamship. It's not sitting in water, but it is still there, and it's a profitable tourist attraction in Bristol, England. So I could never stand it when people would be like, oh, these things are never successful. It's like, no, most of them usually are successful. It's just the ones that aren't successful are being run improperly. Chris says, Ron's ship USS Truxtun could get up to 35 knots because it was nuclear powered. Yeah, I heard those ships go really fast. Goofy Roll says, the problem with today's world is that you have to pre-plan everything well in advance. I like being spontaneous. Yeah, I like being spontaneous too. Thank you. Like, that's one of my favorite things, is going somewhere on a trip and just spontaneously trying something new, you know? But yeah, you're right. Nowadays, everything has to be planned in far in advance. You got to have your little, like, schedule all laid out. That was one of the things I liked about Disneyland, was you could visit the park and just do whatever you wanted willy-nilly. It didn't really matter what order or what time you arrived, you know? Like, you could just do whatever. And that was so fun. But now today, like, even if you want to go to Disneyland, you got to have a whole schedule laid out for you, you know? I see my friends go to the park, and they already know what time they got to get there. They got to know when they get reservations for this, or that. And just to me, I'm like, that's too stressing to have a day of fun, you know? Too stressing. I like being spontaneous when I go somewhere and have fun. When I went to Seattle the other day with my dad, it was a lot like that. I mean, we did book one of our tours, so we knew that by 5 p.m. we had to be at the tour place. But otherwise, the rest of the day, we just were spontaneous, and it was fun. It was really fun. J. Rod says, Delta Queen paddle boat is classic. Is that on the Mississippi? Or am I thinking of something different? Christian says, I barely know any other ships besides White Star and Cunard ships. Me too. To be totally honest, most of the ships I know are either White Star Line or Cunard ships. But, I mean, to be fair, they were, like, the world's most popular steamship companies. So, I mean, it's not like, you know, it's not like they were some little-known companies that were famous because of newspapers. Like, they were, like, the two biggest companies that operated ships around the world at the time. Brian's gonna leave. See you later, Brian. J-Rod says, yes, it's on the Mississippi River. I thought so. I figured I heard of the Delta Queen. The one I really want to go on when I go to New Orleans is the Natchez. I really want to ride aboard the Natchez. Because it's it's a steamship, so steamboat, I should say. But yeah, but it's still undergoing repairs because it caught fire back in August, I think it was. Back in August it caught fire while it was undergoing repairs. So they're still doing those repairs now. I hope it comes back, you know. It's a rough spot on the handle, and I was trying to think, I'm like, I hope that's not damage to the handle. Maybe I just, like... I don't know. Alright. Chris says, I also like the SS Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse. It kind of looks like a great-looking ship. Of the German ships, I like the Kronprinz Wilhelm. But it looks very much like the Kaiser Wilhelm, so... Christian says, I heard that J. Bruce Ismay's reputation was destroyed because of the sinking of Titanic. It was, yeah. A lot of people put blame on him, and, you know, because he's the top guy, you know. That's another problem with the world, is that no matter... when anything wrong happens, any kind of disaster, it could be a complete accident. I'm not necessarily talking about Titanic, though. It was an accident, but still. Anything. It could be a complete accident. But people still want to point the finger at somebody. They need someone to blame. And, you know, it could be like, I heard a story about, like, a sheet of ice coming off of someone's roof, you know, while the ice was melting and stuff, and, you know, injured somebody, and they tried to, like, sue because the roof was not made properly or something. And, you know, the thing is that accidents happen in this world, but people feel like they need to put blame on somebody. And so it was in a case like that where Bruce Ismay was heavily blamed for what happened to Titanic. But really, while there are certain things that can be traced back to Bruce Ismay, the majority of the issues were just a terrible stew of ingredients that just all came together to make the perfect disaster. And, you know, I mean, people would point blame at individual things or people, you know, things like, you know, there not being enough lifeboats, and then they'll come up with all kinds of reasons why there wasn't enough lifeboats, and then they'll say things like, you know, that the binoculars were lost and the ship could have survived if they had only seen the iceberg in time. But then there's evidence to say that they would have never seen the iceberg even with the binoculars, you know, things like that. So, because it was really dark outside, you need light to see through binoculars. You know, so there's all kinds of things, and Bruce Ismay was one of the easiest targets. Everybody could blame him because he's the top guy. So they all blamed him, and he got called all kinds of things, and it ruined his reputation, and his career never recovered, and, you know, and he was forced to be kind of a recluse for the rest of his life. So, kind of a recluse, not a full recluse, but, you know, so it's things like that. I don't necessarily pity him. He was still very rich and lived a very nice life aside from his reputation being destroyed. But, so I don't pity him, but still, you know, it's interesting when an accident happens that everybody needs someone to blame, no matter if it was an act of God even. So, Goofy Roll says some of the paddle wheelers will let you play their Calliopes. It sounds like so much fun. I've seen a video of someone on the Natchez playing the Calliope. I thought that was pretty cool. Hello, Ocean Liner 119. Justin says my other favorite ships domestically include the Milwaukee Clipper, the steamer Columbia, USS the Sullivans, and the Keewatin of the Great Lakes. All of them very worthy of preservation and restoration. Yeah, I like quite a few of those too. The Sullivans is a cool warship. I'm not much of a warship fan, but I thought it was pretty interesting looking. And then the Keewatin, definitely a great, you know, well, it's a Great Lakes ship, but I was going to say a great ship. Yeah, very much so. Oceanliner says, what's happening? Well, I just finished drinking all my tea. I just finished eating the treats to go with it. And I was going to start getting ready to sign off of the live stream because I have to get back to work. But, let's see. So, possibly tomorrow, which is Thursday for those who aren't part of my time zone, Thursday will probably be chapter 6 of the Queen Mary, Queen of the Queens book. So if I have that done by tomorrow, I'll put that out tomorrow. And then Friday, I'm still rooting for a full and complete, well-rounded update on the Queen Mary's construction. Not just what's happening right now, but over the course of the Queen Mary's time in the last 2 years. So it'll be kind of a full, well-rounded update, just in time for the reopening of the Queen Mary, which might be sometime this year. And then the next tea time will be Saturday. So I'm switching, because they were on Sundays, but like I said in the last stream, I don't want to try to make my live stream compete with Historic Travels' Sunday night live streams. Because I noticed that on Sunday nights, that's where like half my viewers go, as they go to his live stream, and then some of them come from his live stream to mine. So I don't want to make them compete because we both have the same exact time. So I'm going to move mine to Saturdays. And so Saturday, 4 p.m. Pacific time will be the next tea time. All right, making sure I got through all the comments, and there's nothing I really need to respond to at the moment, but okay, so that is the plan for this week, and then hopefully the start of next week will be some fun videos, like some fun fact listing videos about the Queen Mary and various other ships, possibly, and then I'll be working on eventually another documentary of something, either the Johann von Oldenbarnevelt, which I was still working on, or maybe the Oceanic if I ever get to that. We'll see. I still have to finish doing notes on that book, and I never have time to read the book. So, alrighty. Oh, Mark. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I love doing them on Sundays, but literally, like, I go from having 50 viewers down to, like, 18 sometimes, because they all go to Historic Travels' live stream when his is on half an hour later. So I start to miss all the viewers. So I knew that it was kind of like an issue. So, yeah, I have to move it. Alright, folks, I'm going to call it done for today. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all on Saturday. Bye-bye.